congratulations on the film.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
For a film that for a long time before it got made was deemed too dark and possibly uncommercial, it's done remarkably well commercially and critically, which must be very gratifying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, when I was writing it, it seemed way too dark to sell, and then seemed too dark to actually get made once I did sell it, and it's all been very, very surprising. And it's Alcon who produced it. It's kind of a tribute to them. They didn't try and make it into something it wasn't, and just kind of went for it. So yeah, I was shocked.
Now, I believe it was a long road to getting this film made.
Yes.
So if we can just kind of start at the beginning of this epic tale.
Sure. Yeah.
Am I right in thinking you were living in Brooklyn when you wrote this?
Yeah.
And presumably you'd written some other scripts before Prisoners.
A little bit. I went to film school long before I wrote Prisoners, and after that I had done just a bunch of random things in New York City. And at some point, I think I decided to just try just write spec scripts and see how that worked out. And I wrote one and used that script to get a manager in Los Angeles. I didn't have any sort of connections, so I just kind of randomly wrote 3 letters, and I got someone to kind of pay a little bit of attention to me, and the script I wrote after that was Prisoners, or at least an early version of that, and that was in 2009, 2010. Or thereabouts, and I kind of worked on it for like a year or two, and I'd work on it at night, in the mornings. I was working this job, and eventually it took a while because I did many drafts of it. My manager would send me notes, I'd do another draft, and so on and so forth, and then finally got it to a point where we figured it was done, and barely managed to get an agent with it because every agency in town was like, "This is ridiculously dark, and we don't have a clue what to do with it." And finally, somebody decided to, they're like, "Oh, maybe there's something to this." And then we went out with it, and people seemed to like it. Mark Wahlberg was attached to it for a while, and he kind of championed it, and he ended up being a producer on it. And we went through a lot of different incarnations of directors and actors and so on and so forth. And it went on for quite some time where they were kind of trying to package it, and I still hadn't really officially sold it. I was still kind of working at my job, and everyone at the job was kind of like, "We thought you sold the script. What's going on?"
Well, this is what I heard. I heard that there was a point out in Hollywood where it was the trades were saying, Leonardo DiCaprio's side or Mark Wahlberg's side, Christian Bale's side. It's the most hottest script in town. But meanwhile, you hadn't
actually sold it.
You hadn't sold it. You didn't have a penny, and you were still working back in Brooklyn
at
the
I was
day
still
job.
Doing the job, going to work and it was kind of weird too because they had written some stuff about it, and everyone there had figured it was some kind of a strange charade, right? It was like it went on and on and on. And then finally, we sold it to Alcon, and they just bought it with no attachments. And but even after that, it took time to figure out who was going to direct it, who was going to star in it, and then I think eventually it landed in Denis Villeneuve after they had seen it on D, and he met with them, and soon after he signed on. He was able to get the thing greenlit, and Hugh Jackman was involved before that. But once Denis came on, I think everybody felt like he was the guy. And
well, I was going to say, without it sounds a bit rude, but for a first script, to say the first script, the caliber of people involved in the production. I mean, pretty much everyone from director to cast to Roger Deakins' amazing cinematography. It's all Oscar winners or Oscar nominees. I mean, it's like you got the grade A package with this one. Yeah,
it was like Christmas when it finally all came together because it took. I couldn't even begin to describe to you how that all came to be. I don't know. It's bizarre to me in a beautiful way.
And you touched on it earlier. So to get management out here, so you work in Brooklyn.
Yes.
I believe you sent a script, not Prisoners. You sent a script, and the feedback was
an even less commercial horror movie. Yes.
This was the commercial one.
Yeah, this is
the feel-good movie.
Compared to the one I had written before this was kind of the feel-good, kind of like, I'm going to get into the zone on this one and really please all 4 quadrants.
But what I thought was interesting was the management team who signed you up.
Yes.
For what eventually became Prisoners, they actually said to you, correct me if I'm wrong, apparently they said to you, the script you sent us we cannot sell.
Yes.
But feel good though it wasn't.
Right.
But yes. They said that we like your voice. We think something else you write we will be able to sell.
Yeah. They kind of like, we like the writing. We see something here. And then they kind of worked with it, after, and then I came to them with Prisoners soon after that, and they're like, all right. And
so Prisoners was the pitch you sent them when they said, we'd like to see something else, give us a different idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had sent them a couple things, and I think, actually what happened was I think I got, I had gotten sick. I was on all this cold medicine, and I was just in a bad place, and I had sent my manager this sort of 1 page, like, hey, how about this? It's probably stupid because I'm on drugs, but and then he was like, yeah, this could be something.
At that point where you sent the 1 pager for Prisoners, what was the outline?
It was very, it was essentially what the movie is more or less, except it was exclusively about the father, the detective character, and the idea of it being more of a two-hander. That kind of came later. But it was just the basic idea that the father had, captured and done terrible things to someone who turns out to be innocent, and then what do you do, kind of thing. And that was essentially the gist of the 1 pager.
Now that script, again, in the long journey to being made, I remember that made the blacklist and was getting talk that it was like, this is like the best script, unproduced script in Hollywood. La, la, la. At that point, I was just curious. You're not getting paid. No one's bought the script off you. You're still in Brooklyn. Yeah. You're doing a day job that I understand was not the most fun day job in the world.
No, I worked at it was a marketing company. They did all direct mail. So I helped produce all of the, filling the landfills of America with all of our, with American Express, and this and that, all these kind of.
So you're who we have to thank for that.
Yeah, that was all me. I was working on that, and a very kind of small, low capacity. I would actually trim out they would have to present to the clients. And I would trim out the envelopes and the letters and so forth, and all the presentation materials and whatnot. It was pretty cool.
So as a writer, a writer's dream is that someone buys your script. A writer's dream is that someone likes your script. The blacklist, where someone says this is a great script, and then someone buys it, and then someone makes it. But A, that was a long process. But B, at the time the script was creating lots of noise. It wasn't really having an actual, presumably direct impact on your existence because it wasn't.
In terms of the fact that it was a good sort of boost. I was I'm glad everyone's excited. But no, it didn't actually. Yeah, it took up until there was actually money because I had no money, and I was married, and my wife and I lived in this little apartment, I had to. They wanted me to fly back and forth for meetings and stuff like that, which I could in no way afford. So I was like charging stuff up my credit card. I was actually losing money fast. So it was like, and then there came a point too where I wasn't quite sure. Maybe it just won't sell because I think a lot of times they can, stuff like that you can get kicked around and so on and so forth, but it doesn't actually land anywhere. So.
No, that's definitely a regular story.
Yeah.
But so presumably it was a good day when Alcon came in and said, we're buying it, we're making it, and it wasn't even, I believe it wasn't even talent, there were no talent stipulations.
No, and that was what was great, because all of the packaging, because I was at a big agency, and they were trying to get everything to kind of, to click that way, and Alcon just bought it without any attachments, so that was great.
So at that point, did you then come out? Did you move out to LA? What happened?
Yeah, then I finally moved out here with my wife, and we've been here ever since. And now we have two kids. I didn't have kids when I wrote the script, but I have kids, and I probably wouldn't have written it.
Yeah, it is difficult as a parent to watch.
Yeah, no,
you know.
I absolutely, and as it should be. And I wouldn't have been able, if I had had children as I was trying to write it, and I had to keep thinking of it and kind of reel like my kids, I never would have gotten it done.
Now, the film is 2.5 hours, is it? I think it's about 2.5 hours. Was there any pressure, either from yourself or from externally, to cut it down? Because traditionally, we're told if you're trying to pitch a script, sell a script, you're going for about 110 sort of page. You're not going for 250 or whatever.
No, you're not. But it's interesting though. The script itself really isn't. I think it's like 114 pages or 130.
Really?
It's actually not, but because of the way I think Denis shoots and the pacing and so on and so, in all to the good, I think. But I think it didn't really turn out to be a page equals a minute, as it were. And I think actually even it was 100. The original cut was like 3 hours long, and they had to cut out I think about 3 or 4 like big scenes, and actually had to kind of reconfigure some of the story to kind of. Get everything to link up, but Joel Cox, who was he edited all Clint Eastwood's movies, he did an amazing job and was able to kind of make it work and get it under 2.5 hours. So that was good.
Now a lot of critics have praised or have been warm to the film. I think because they see Hugh Jackman's kind of journey as a metaphor, allegory, something. Certainly a comment on kind of American foreign policy and this idea of is torture ever justified? When you were writing it, was that in your mind? Were you thinking I want to explore the rights and wrongs of this kind of act?
I don't think I'd ever think directly in those stark terms. I think. You hear about things in the periphery, like Guantanamo Bay and all these things that are just in the news, and all that stuff I think kind of permeates it's in there, and I'm aware of it. But I definitely never set out to make a statement, or I just tried to be true to the characters, and though all that I'm aware of all of that stuff. But I think if you go in and that's kind of part of the plan, then I think it'll just all go to hell.
I suppose this might be a slightly cynical question, but do you think the fact that was in the script, even if, as you say, it wasn't as calculated as that, but it was there and percolating, and do you think in some ways that helps attract the caliber of cast and director you've got, the fact that people see the film to be, for want of about something? Do you think that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's. It just adds a whole other kind of layer to the way people understand it, and I think that it helps kind of elevate it beyond just being a thriller for thriller's sake, which is fine too. I love thrillers for thriller's sake, but I think this had a little bit more on its mind, and especially the way it was directed and the way the actors came at it, and that they didn't give short shrift to that sort of that component of the whole thing, which I think which was great.
I always ask this, but because I was curious, as a writer, when you saw the final film, was there a lot of instances where you're like, wow, I did not expect that to play out like that. I did not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's strange. I mean, it happened. Usually, it overwrites the version you imagine in your head so quickly. It's hard sometimes, now thinking back on it. But yeah, there were a lot of things. I think just the performances, I think, just were kind of beyond what I had hoped for. And everyone just, delved so deeply into their respective characters, and how that all sort of, and then the violence of it all, I think, too, is, you see it on screen, and the way Denis shot it, and it definitely, it's different than just sort of, writing it. And even as you imagine it in your head, as visceral as you think you are imagining it, and when you see it on screen, it's like you're just as kind of like, oh, it's hard to take.
You touched on it earlier as well, but one thing I was curious about was you mentioned that the film initially, when you were writing it, it was about It was about Hugh Jackman's character. It's about the father.
Yeah.
It was about his kind of deeds or misdeeds and how that plays out. But when I saw the film, I felt it was really about two characters.
Yes.
At what stage did Detective Loki, did he kind of just emerge more and more as you were writing it?
He kind of did, yeah. I mean, he was always in the story, but we weren't really kind of following him when he wasn't with the parents. That was we pretty much just experienced him when the parents did. And then I don't know, like it was fairly early on. I just started slowly. His part just started getting bigger and just trying to figure out what he was doing and trying to follow the kind of the investigative piece of it all and just the idea that they're kind of two sides of the coin, these two guys. They're different and they clash, but there's something kind of similar about them, and they have this sort of this kind of thing that happens. They kind of understand each other in this kind of weird way, and I just kind of kept building on that idea.
Well, I was wondering because with the father, we see a lot of clues to who he is quite early on. He shoots. He's ready for an emergency. Mm-hmm. He passes on his credo to life to his son. He's religious. He's very, in some ways, clearly defined.
Truly, yeah.
Early in the film, we know the character that we're experiencing.
Yes.
But with Jake Gyllenhaal, I felt all the clues were hidden. It was like It's always like an aside remark, a glimpse of a ring or a tattoo or something. Right. You're like, what's this about? I felt like we were straining to discover who he was. Was that deliberate?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And I think the character was always sort of hard to define. You never really knew what his, he didn't seem to have a family. You never saw where he lived. And just the idea that he's sort of this person who's asking questions, and he himself is sort of a question, and trying to play with that idea. And then when Jake came on, we worked on it together, and he came up with the tics and the tattoos and stuff like that I think kind of further, like, who is this guy, and what does he want, and just kind of keeps you guessing. And I think it just created an interesting, because cop characters, they're just, they're people first and then cops second, and it's always fun to kind of subvert the archetypes of all that stuff.
Well, yeah. So I was going to ask about that. So how does that work as the writer when an actor comes on board of a certain status or caliber and says, I've got some questions, I want to do this. Did you spend a lot of time together? Did you swap ideas? Were there times where you went, no, he wouldn't say that. No, he wouldn't do. How does that work?
Yeah, we sat down a couple times, me, Jake, and the director, and we would talk about the character and things he would or wouldn't do. And I kind of wrote up this backstory for Jake in terms of where he came from and what I did know about him. But yeah, and I mean, at first you're like, well, and he's the things that we're adding, the tattoos and the tics and stuff like that. It can be great, or it can just be too much, And I think it's you have to trust in the director and the actor that they're gonna do it right, and they did. I think it's just you have to, but also I think it's just kind of good to keep anything that makes it better is good, regardless of whose idea it was or where it came from. It's all for the good, So I think that's a good way to go.
Another thing, and I don't know if this was deliberate, but it surprised me a little, was near the end when we discover who the killer really is, and she is shot and dies. Her death is very quick.
Yes.
Which, traditionally, certainly in years gone by, in a Hollywood movie, we'd have made that death a bit more cathartic. We'd have kind of relished the killing of the sort of dragon, the demon a bit.
Right, yeah,
but it's almost throwaway in this.
Yeah.
He discovers who it is, bang, she's dead, and we've moved on to the next scene.
Right.
I remember thinking, whoa, that's it? She's dead?
Yeah. I mean, to me, as I was writing it, to me it was just all about, you gotta save the girl, and I think it never really occurred, but it's true. I mean, I think it's just the way Denis sort of sees things and the way he directs that, and also that he's not an American filmmaker too, so he doesn't necessarily, the tropes aren't as fully, burned into his psyche as they might otherwise be. So he kind of takes a different approach to certain things that we've seen done, a certain way many times. So that was all for the good, I think. So yeah, I think it's mostly to his yeah.
Okay, and also the ending itself,
yes,
which is a little ambiguous. Was that always the ending?
Yeah, it was. It was always in the script that, and it just kind of cuts out like that, and that was something I definitely figured was going to get changed in a big way, and there was definitely moments where certain people were involved and like, no, it's not going to end like that. It's going to keep going, and my character, and there were all sorts of discussions and whatnot, but it never actually changed. And then we got to shoot it the way we wanted to shoot it, and the producers were behind it, and everybody was kind of behind it, but the producers were still like, well, we're going to shoot an alternate too, just in case, it doesn't work for whatever reason. And they did that, so I wrote sort of an alternate, so that scene kind of goes on for another 2 minutes or so.
Right.
And they shot that, but then thankfully they were able to use the original.
Was that going to be a DVD extra or something?
I don't know. They haven't put it on there yet, so maybe not. We'll see.
Now, one thing that surprised me was that in the long whilst you were going through a particularly long process of selling your first script and won't it get made, stars coming and going, sort of almost under the radar, in the midst of all that, you wrote Contraband, which came out and did very well. Tidy Business, I believe.
That was a good one.
How did that come about?
That came about because of Mark Wahlberg had read Prisoners, and he was involved with that. So he wanted to do something with me, and they had heard of there was this Icelandic movie that they wanted to see if they could remake and redo and so on and so forth. So I ended up doing that with him, and it was great, and it just kind of moved cranked right along.
But that must have been very quick. That must have been
compared to Prisoners, it was amazing. It was like I came on, I wrote the movie, they shot it, and it came out, and it was all like it was very free and easy. Not easy, but definitely it just kept happening on a schedule of sorts.
Was it is it a different challenge? Because Prisoners is an original story. You came up with everything. It's your baby. With this, someone saying to you, "We've got a story. We've got a
totally different. Well, I mean, it's different in this. I mean, it's kind of like here's that film. The original film had a really good sort of structure. The way the kind of the skeleton of it was worked really well, and then it was just kind of reinventing characters and finding moments. In a way, it kind of frees you, I think, to. You're like, oh, cool, I know the plot works, so I can just, work on character stuff and try and get, dial and get all this other stuff to work. And it's different, but it's nice in a way when you know that at least, the plot works. If you get it right, at least it's not broken in some fundamental way.
With Prisoners, it's quite elaborate's not the right word, but it's a complicated plot or plotting. That's going on underneath. What was harder for you, kind of nailing the plot or nailing the characterizations?
Probably the plot, but I did all the characterization first, and then I kind of set the characters loose, and the characters kind of plotted it out by just trial and error, trying to follow them through the story. And then kind of, so rather than creating the plot and forcing the characters to kind of move through it, I tried to do the characters first and just say, okay, what is he going to do now? And now what is he going to do? And same with the backstory until you find a version of it that it kind of fits together and do it that way.
So you're not an advocate of the kind of, the fairly well practiced these days kind of plotting structures of kind of like, I know where my beats are and I know where my plot points are going to be.
Yeah, I've never, I definitely understand. I think that's definitely a very valid and great way to work, but I just don't work that way. I work in a much more just kind of stupid way, I think, where it's just sort of, I'm just writing it. I don't know, it's less figured out, I guess.
With that kind of a methodology, though, does that mean that you end up with very long drafts?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. With this, I probably could have put like a book together because I had so many different drafts that were just had things in them that just were just big chunks that just came out, pieces of the story and characters and things that happened in the town and whatnot. So yeah, especially for this one, there was just tons and tons of stuff.
What's your writing process like? Are you someone who does a ton of research first, or do you sit down on a blank page and just start writing, or do you think of who you want to be in the movie? How does it work for you?
I usually just start writing it, or just start kind of working. I mean, obviously with this one, there wasn't really any research because it was all just. I mean, even though certain things are kind of inspired by whatever from the news and what have you, but no. And I mean now, depending on what the project is now, I'll do research and stuff like that, but I try and just start writing as soon as possible, because research can be really kind of lulls you into a sense of. Of happiness and ease, and it's fun to do it, but and it pays, and it's a good thing to do, but yeah, it's better probably for me just to start writing it.
And I understand that you've been working since Prisoners on a TV series.
Yeah, it's called The Red Road. Did it for the Sundance Channel.
Is that coming out soon?
Yes, it's coming out February 27th.
So you can talk about it. You can tell us some things about it. Okay.
Yeah. The first episode airs on February 20th. We did 6 episodes first season, and it was really great. It was a very different experience of working on a feature film, which is part of the reason I wanted to get into it, because as a writer, you have more kind of say over the whole, kit and caboodle.
So you're like are you running the show, or you write?
Yeah, so I co-executive produced and created blah 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 and all that good stuff. And they got a seasoned showrunner to keep me from fucking it all up. So that was good.
That was good of them.
Yes.
So you've written 6 episodes. That's good. Can you just tell us a little bit about kind of what genre it is, what it's
It's a similar genre to Prisoners. It's kind of it's very much a thriller. Family drama thriller, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And it centers around it's inspired by a real tribe of American Indians who live in this mountain range in New Jersey, but there's only about 5,000 of them. You can actually see Manhattan from the mountains from where they live, and they don't have federal recognition. A lot of people don't even think they're Indians, and there's all this kind of strange controversy about who they are. And it centers around this tribe and this cop who kind of polices the tribe in the small town where he grew up, and tried to just make it as much like a feature film thriller in terms of just kind of keeping the economy a story and just not really saving anything and just kind of churning through it and trying to make it as just as jam-packed as possible.
You think it's going to become more common now for people such as yourself to kind of to parallel career a little bit and just go, I'm going to do a feature, I'm going to do some TV, I'm going to just mix it up a bit?
TV is obviously, it's a great time for TV, and there's a lot of great stuff. And there's things you can do in TV that you can't do in movies and vice versa. So I think I definitely love both for different reasons.
Have you given any thought to what you're going to do next now that the show is kind of wrapped?
I'm working on another feature film project now. They don't want me to announce it yet, but it's a book. It's a classic novel that I'm adapting, which is great. So it should be fun.
I think I could guess it, but I'm not gonna. I won't do that.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to open up to the audience, but before I do, I'm going to give you a quick rapid fire, 5 very quick, easy questions.
Okay.
Because we've decided now this is how we're going to wrap these things up. So, first one, what is your favourite movie, if you had to name one?
The Shining.
Okay, interesting. And if you had to name one writer?
Richard Matheson.
Okay. What do you write on? I'm asking because some screenwriters still handwrite everything because they like the way it slows them down. Some are laptops, some are on anything.
I do a little bit of the handwriting, but mostly just the laptop.
Uh-huh. Is there any one director you'd really most like to work with, given a choice?
David Lynch.
Uh-huh. And finally, is there one actor you'd name that you say I'd love to write something for him?
Leo DiCaprio.
Cool. Good answers. All right. Thank you very much. Let's open up, see if we've got some questions from the audience. Anyone? Oh, 2 at once. Let's go here first.
Question. You mentioned Joel Cox had sort of under, I forget whose direction, going to shave some time off of this movie.
Yeah.
And you given him credit for recombobulating it.
Yes.
Was that a very collaborative experience with you in terms of how are we going to chop it out?
I wasn't involved in the re-cobobbling business. That was just the director and Joel Cox. I don't know. I think at that point it was kind of like they had what they had, and they shot what they shot, and it was kind of figuring, okay, how do we? And that's something. I mean, the editor, the director. I mean.
Did you know where it was going?
I did. I knew I knew what scenes they had to take out, and I knew kind of what that would entail in terms of what had to be kind of rearranged in order to make everything make sense. But I have to say, the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice it. Like at the end, I'm like, oh wait, what about that? And then, but I didn't even. It's. So no, it was good. It was. They did a good job with it. I think especially having watched it and then realizing, and then I didn't miss it at all. I think it was all for the good.
Yes.
More along the lines of the process. How do you pick Pennsylvania? Like, where
Pennsylvania.
does
It was
come
interesting. I had actually written it originally. It was set in my hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts. And I think they didn't want to do that because of the accent thing, because everyone has like strong. So there's like a preponderance of like Boston thrillers. So it ended up being Pennsylvania, which is similar sort of blue collar type town, and it was actually shot in Atlanta. So it was and I think in a lot of ways it's kind of like anywhere U.S. It's almost like in the movie Seven, where it's like it's in a city and we don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's that kind of thing.
Anyone else? Yes.
Okay, so the moment in the film when they find the first daughter,
Yes.
and she wakes up in the hospital and she's like, he was there.
Yes.
What was that? Just because she was drugged up and or what was that moment?
So when Hugh Jackman, the first time he goes to Holly Jones' house, the first time he's there, the girls are actually in the next room, and he doesn't even realize it. And she says it, and she says it put tape over our mouths, so they couldn't, they were, couldn't say anything.
Okay.
Horrible, isn't it? Horrible, horrible.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what?
Yes.
So, a lot of these characters, obviously the Melissa Leo character is the true villain, but there's a lot of evil in this script. And were you ever during that process kind of haunted by that, or haunted by what you're creating? And do you ever step back and say, holy shit, I'm making this really, really dark piece?
Yeah, it was. For this one especially, I think because there's no. Usually the stuff I write it's dark, but occasionally someone will say something funny or something, slightly. But with this, you can't really make a joke. There's nothing funny about what's happening. And and every time you sit down to write it, you've got to think, all right, I'm a father, my kids are gone, everything's fucked, it's just and you're doing this every day, and especially when you know that, and you're like, and no one's ever going to buy this, and what's the point? And I'm so depressed anyway, and well, that just kind of feeds into it. It's this kind of, in a good way, I guess, but yeah, no, yes, definitely haunts you, for sure.
Yes. Anyone? Any more? Yes.
It's the first time I've seen it. I was pretty blown away, and I'm curious as to. I just thought it was such a well balanced film, and even though it's extreme, it's really well balanced from a character level. From even with the violence, I thought it was just kind of the right amount. And as far as also the reveals and kind of how those reveals were done, was that. Please don't tell us that was really easy. But how?
No,
what was the? How did you find that balance? I guess.
I wrote it over. It took a long time. I think you draft after draft after draft. Reading it and reading it and reading it. I'd do it. Every week I'd do another draft, and then I'd read it on the subway home from work, and it would always be and you just gotta keep reading it like it's the first time you ever read it, and keep seeing it in your head like you're watching the movie, and then just keep convincing yourself that you haven't been working on this thing forever and ever, that this is all new to you, and I think it's just you just got to keep playing it over in your head like a movie, and then eventually it just kind of becomes clear what you don't need to see. But it just chipping away endlessly, I think, is the way.
Yes, over here.
When you did see it in your head daily, when you're watching it in your head as a movie, was it like it came out? Were you afraid that the production company you chose was going to go a different direction, or the editing?
to me, the idea that they'd even make it at all was so, unbelievable. So the idea of like how they would make it, it never really. I mean, I would just assume, I guess, if you would ask me way back, I'd be, of course they're going to fuck it all up, but at least they're going to, make the movie and it's going to be fine. And but it was amazing. I mean, Roger Deakins is amazing, and I think I definitely, would picture things in my mind, and I grew up drawing, not writing, so I kind of draw things before I write them, and visually, I was very, very happy with how it all came together, and I think it was because they came at it in such a kind of visual, sort of image-based sort of kind of language that they had going. So I was happy.
Do you think I meant to ask you that actually, because I forgot you had a drawing background, an art background. Do you think the fact that you do visualize a lot, does that affect the way you write? Yeah,
it slows me down for sure, because I always have to kind of like draw the room in my head, and I'm blocking everything, and I'm like, all right, and they're sitting over on the right side of the room, and the sconces are over here, and the light's over here, and then none of which ends up in the script and makes no difference whatsoever, because but still I have to kind of be like, but it makes, as I'm so I'm like, oh, now I get it, and now I can write a scene here, kind of thing. But
yes.
Did you have an actor in mind when you were writing it? Because Hugh Jackman is such a likable guy in general, and that helps with how dark he is for the audience, I think. But did you have someone in mind?
Yeah, I never really did. I think maybe early on, I thought it might be like Bruce Willis or something like that. But I think that was the one person I kind of envisioned. But yeah, it would be so easy just to be completely unlike, and he's great.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most incredible things, I mean, for me, it's the first time watching it as well, and kind of hyperventilating at the end. But one of the most incredible things in the film, aside from the performances, was the whistle. I mean, the whistle is a symbol of something that people use to draw attention to themselves, also is something that people use to call things to them. There's so much that whistle embodies, and it's what causes her to leave the house, and it's eventually what he uses in the hole and finds. So at what point in your process did that whistle kind of emerge, or was that one of the very first things even?
It was one of the first things, oddly. My wife was a lifeguard, and she had a red whistle that would just sit on the desk, and for some reason I saw it, and I was like, oh, red whistle. Somehow it kind of came out of that. And then began to embody all the wonderful things you said there, that became the meaningful thing that it is.
So, favorite movie is Shining, favorite director, David Lynch.
Yes.
Is there a comedy inside you?
I don't know. I'm guessing probably not, no. Sadly. I don't think I'll.
Plans to make a horror?
I'd love to make a horror, yeah. The first script I wrote before Prisoners was a horror film. Yeah, I love elevated horror movies. So I definitely, want to do that.
Any more for any more? In that case, Aaron, thank you so much.
Thank you.